Let's go JavaScripting! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and today we're taking a look at the Iterable protocol. Now, when I was looking over the JavaScript docs, figuring out what the heck am I going to talk about now, because I'm kind of running out of things to talk about, I came across the Iterable protocol. Now, it's been a part of the JavaScript world for a long time, but only recently have you been able to put iterable protocols on other things besides objects that are iterable. Now, what do we mean by iterable? Well, an array is iterable, which means you can start at index 0 and go all the way through and say, give me your next value, give me your next value, next value, next value, you know, like a for of loop or something like that. Well, you can use the iterable protocol to define your own iterable objects, and it's fantastic. You want to see how it works? Let's get started. Okay, so I got a simple class here. In fact, it's a static class because I'm throwing the exception when I do a constructor. And each property I have 13 properties. Each one is a static on property. So to be able to access it, I say ranks.ace.name and ranks.ace.abbreviation. So if I was to go into node and we type in node iterable, we'll get the aces represented by the name ace and the abbreviation of A. Yeah, simple. But what if I wanted to do something like this? For constant rank of ranks. Well, we really can't do that because I don't have any property here that allows me to make an iterable of ranks. Because I'm using the for of here. That basically tells me, and I've covered for of in another Boring JavaScript video, that basically says here, I'm going to iterate over all the iterable properties of a particular object. I have no iterable properties in this object. In fact, by default, this isn't an iterable object like an array. So what do? Well, you create your own iterable. Let me show you that. So here it is right here. Now this is just a very quick little snippet. This doesn't actually run yet, but the key here is this part here. This is a reserved symbol within JavaScript that basically says that the function that gets assigned to this particular property is an iterable property. So that when I use iterable constructs like for of or a deconstructor, which I'll show you also here in a second, it's going to try to find an iterable property within this particular class, and it's going to find symbol.iterator. And when it finds that, it's going to say, hey, this is an iterator. Execute this function to be able to get all the iteration that you need for this particular ranks. Now, there's a bunch of different things you can do, especially when using, generator functions, when using next loops, a whole bunch of different ways. I'm going to be using a little generator function, which I also covered generator functions in Boring JavaScript not too long ago, so take a look at that video. But let's go ahead and pop that function on there and let me show you what it does. So here's the rest of the function itself. So basically it's a generator function, and we know that because it has the $sign here. And again, in a generator function, when we hit the yield button, or the yield, that yield basically says that, hey, when whoever's consuming the iterator needs this particular piece of information, I'm going to yield this particular piece of data to them. And I will continue to yield it until I've completely run out of things. So when the iterator comes up and says, give me your first value, the very first value is going to be ranks.ace. And it could be any order here that I specify. Then when that iterator comes back and says, okay, I need the next item, what is it going to be? I'm going to yield ranks.2. And so on and so forth, ranks.3, ranks.4, all the way down ranks.king, until the iterator comes back and says, hey, what's your next one? The iterator is going to say, I don't have any more, and so that's going to shut down the process. So now what's going to happen when I do this for of right here, it's going to do exactly what I got finished talking about there. It's going to basically say, okay, constant rank of ranks. Hey, ranks, do you have an iterator? And ranks is going to say, I sure do. It's defined as this function right here. In fact, it's a generator function. What do you need? And the for of is going to come back and say, okay, give me your first one. First one, okay, that's going to be yield ranks.ace. So it's going to come back here and it should say rank.name ace, abbreviation of A. And then the for of is going to come back again and say, ranks, give me another one, next one. And ranks is going back and say, hey, how about 2? And it's going to then do 2 down here, and so on and so forth until it does king, and the for of loop is going to come back and say, hey, ranks, give me your next one. And ranks is going to say, oops, I've given you my last one. That's it. I have no more. And the for is going to say, thank you very much. It's going to finish out, and it's going to then go to the console.log for my aces represented by name and abbreviation. Woo! Want to see how it works? Let's do it. Let's click over to Node. Let's clear off our screen. Go Node Iterable. And bingo bango. Perfect. And all because all I had to do was sit there and tell JavaScript that this particular object, when it's instantiated, has a static iterator on it so that I can then do things like this. Now, it doesn't fully implement an array. It just implements anything that looks for an iterable. Like, for instance, this piece of code. If I want to use a deconstructor on here, like I've done here, this deconstructs all of the different objects that are within this particular iterator here and puts it into an array. So if I save this and run it within Node, notice now I've got an array. So by using that deconstructor now, I can turn all of my objects, or all of my properties, excuse me, into an array. I can also loop through them as if they were an array. So that's the absolute beauty of using an iterator, the iterator protocol onto an object, is that I can now assign my own iterator. If I wanted to, I can create a for next, or for each, excuse me, I said for next, that's the old basic way, a for each on there to be able to say, hey, for each will then access the iterator, and I can even do a for each loop. I can pretty much make this into an array if I so desired. And that's kind of a little overkill, but this kind of gives you an idea. So where else could this be useful to you? We'll show you that next. Okay, so I now have an object, which has 4 properties: name, type, tail, and legs. So I'm console.logging my cat, and I'm console.logging my cat again. So if I go to Node and type in node object, there's my cat. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had each of these properties as an array? So that when I can access this, using that deconstructor that I did before, or using for of, and things like that, if I had access to all of this, wouldn't that be great? Let's look at some code. Let's add an iterator to it. So here's my iterator. Again, the idea here is that this is a reserved symbol. So now I am defining a new procedure, or excuse me, a new method on my cat with the symbol of iterator. I'm defining, in this case, a generator function. Again, it could be any function, but I'm defining a generator function. And I'm going to use the yield. So I'm using the get own property names of this particular object here to create an internal, or to basically create an internal array of just the property names. And I'm going to yield as an array within an array of key and my cat keys, giving me both the key and the value. So now if I was to run this, all I would have to do is to add code that looks like this. And suddenly I have an array of my properties. Let's take a look at that real quick. Let's clear off our screen. So there we are. Isn't that perfect? Isn't that great? So now I have an array in which each item within the array is itself an array in which the first item is the key and the second item is the value. So all you have to do now for your application to consume this is just give them the iterator. That allows them to do something real simple like this and then play around with those property values all the time. Now, do you really have to do this? No, of course, they could have done their own get property names and they could have built their own specific arrays. So it's not like this is solving a giant problem, but this is just making your code easier to access from other applications. And quite honestly, you can pretty much make yourself an array out of your object if you so desire. So that's, again, one of the fantastic things that you can do with an iterator here. There's just so much you can do with it. So I would suggest going to the Mozilla Developer Network thing, looking up the iterator protocol, and there's a whole bunch of examples on there of some wonderful things that you can do with it. Go over there. That would be something, a little extra homework you could do from this course. And that's all there is for the iterator protocol. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope it didn't bore you to death. Please make sure you click on the like button below and subscribe to this channel for more boring JavaScript videos. Also, go to www.boringjavascript.com to see all of our videos, or go to www.thevirtualboy.com to see everything that we have. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later.